Our next operation is going to be duplicate special. So let's just again begin with a very, very simple object just to cover the very basics of this operation. But first, I just want to also cover some of the ways that we can create duplicates in our scene. And the fastest way that it's going to be is just taking the shift key, hovering over one of the axes, and pushing it outside like this. If by any chance you are hovering over the axis and you do not see this clone value, the only thing you need to do is go to Shift Control, right click, and enable it right here where it says Smart Duplicate. So then the next time when you hover over the axis with the Shift command, then you will see this clone and simply need to drag it in any position you would like to have. The same thing will work in the Scale tool. So if you select the Scale and hold Shift, you can create a clone from the scale and again push it to the side. And the same thing will work with the Rotate. So if you hold Shift over one of the axes, you can now create clones like that as well. There's also alternative, which is simply duplicates. And if you hit Control D, you will see here, it will say result P cube 2. So just go to Control D. And now we have a duplicate cube on top of our existing one. So now we have here two objects, and to see the result, you simply need to push it to the side. All right, and then there's one more that I would like to cover first before we go into duplicate special, and that is duplicate with transform. So basically what that does is, let's say you have some object where you need a lot of repetitions. And let's say that we are making a set of stairs, and I would like to create, again, just simpler representation of stairs. And I would like to have them something like that. So instead of now selecting both duplicating or going to clone and then copying one by one, what you can do instead is you can just select to clone one, position it in any value you wish, so something like this, let's say. And once you're done, the only thing you need to do is hit Shift D as many times as you need this operation to be repeated. And what it's going to do, basically, it's going to just calculate the intervals in between the previous object and repeats the clone on the next one. And the same thing will work with the Scale tool and Rotation tool, and also all of them combined. Meaning that if you create a clone, and if you rotate it a bit, and if you scale it a bit, basically now the new clone that we make will be for this value bigger. So you can see the difference between these two. The next value is going to be bigger, and then so on and so on. All right, so now that we covered the very basics of duplicates, let's go and move on to actual duplicate special operation. So again, duplicate special can be found under Edit right here, and what we want to do is just click on this little checkbox, position it here, and I want to just reset it to make sure that we all work on the same settings. So basically, duplicate special has a lot of options, and some of the options you are going to use more often than others, and we are going to cover those first, and then some other operations we're going to cover in a bit later. So we have geometry type, copy, and instance. So what copy is basically just your typical clone. So if you just hit apply without doing anything, it will give you the same result as the generic duplicate. The only difference here is that you can now select the number of copies, how much you want, hit apply, and then you will get that much copies right here. So as you can see, we have now 7 copies. So what is the difference between copy and instance? So if you now go back to one, hit apply and create a copy, basically copy is standalone object on its own. You can edit and modify it in any way you wish, and it's not connected to your original object in any way. Instance, however, is connected. So if you hit apply and push it, let's say, to the side and you wish to edit it, you will see that it's going to mirror every action that you do. It's going to mirror which vertex you select, in which direction you put it. It's going to mirror the operations that you do. So if you wish to do the extrusions, let's do it maybe here. It's going to be a better example. So it's going to be mirroring every operation that you do. The only thing it will not be mirroring is transformation. So you can move, you can scale, and you can rotate, but it's not going to mirror that. So it's going to mirror only the operations. And we're going to see just in a moment how we can also mirror the movement as well. So let's go a couple of steps back until I get my generic cube back. So this is the difference between copy and instance. And in many situations when we use this tool, we are going to use an instance. And now group under, I'm going to cover that in just a sec. So Smart Transform, if you check this on, it's basically going to be the same thing that you had in Duplicate with Transform, except here again, you can select the instance. And let's say I want to select the clone here, and then I'm going to hit apply. And now you can edit all these instances. All right, let me again go a couple of steps back. Okay, I had duplicate cube there. All right, so this is basically Smart Transform. Now translate, rotate, and scale. So basically translate is your move option. And first box right here, it's going to be your x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis value. So that simply means, if you remember when we were talking about that simple staircase that we need to do, so we just did it manually and position it where exactly we want. So here, instead of doing it manually, okay, so I want this, you can input values that you actually want. So let's say I want 15, value of 15 on x-axis, and I want value of, let's say, this is now y-axis, and whatever your axis is pointing, that's a plus value, and whatever it's on the opposite, it's minus value. So I need, let's say, something like -5. Okay, so here I need to go -5, and let's see how that works. And actually, by accident, I did this. So we hit apply, and this is our result. So now we again just hitting apply, and this is what we get. We can also set the number of copies immediately, like so. All right, let me reset settings, and basically the rotation and scale will do exactly the same thing. So for example, if you wish to translate, let's say 10 here, we can put rotation 45, and number of copies, we can put something like 7, hit apply, and then we'll get something like this, but maybe we'll need a bit more translate, something like 30, hit apply, then we get this as a result. We have slight rotation, we have slight movement, and we have 7 copies. If you want to, you can create also an instance, which is maybe better in this case. So then what you can do is you can come here and edit each of these values individually. So, and we can now go here to the component axis and then just extrude this out. And basically, this is then how we would play with multiple instances, so that basically once you're editing one, everything else gets updated as well. All right, so again, let's just go a couple of steps back. And again, what I'm going to do is just to reset settings. All right, so let's now talk about something else where we're going to use duplicate special. Is let me now enable our grid. And so for now, this cube is right in the middle. Let's say that you are building a robot. So, okay, this is extra. We are building a robot or something, and this is going to be part of the arm or leg, doesn't really matter. And what I want is I would like to have duplicate on the other side of my coordinate system, so that whatever I do here also gets updated on the other side. We had before a situation when we had an instance with simply hit apply, and now whatever we edit on one, let me just go to Shift Control, right click, and enable here world. We have this mirroring effect. So basically it's not a symmetry, but it's sort of a mirroring effect where every operation gets mirrored on the other side. So basically to get a symmetry, what we need to do is we need to go into negative scale value. So we just first need to see in which axes are we lying. So this is going to be our axis, and it's here pointing to the Z. So meaning that here I will need to set to -1. So it will just depend on which axis do you want to have your symmetry on. So here I will just set the value of -1 and hit apply. Now this will do is just create a cube right here on the same position, and this is not exactly what we want. But what we did get is that symmetry value that we wanted. So we do get this mirroring effect, but we also get a symmetry. We still need to do a couple of things before this works. So the first thing that we need to do is we're going to need this object in a group, because even if we do this now, so for example, I come here and if I decide to scale, you will see that transformation does not update. And we also want that values as well. So what we need to do is we need to group this. So it doesn't matter how many objects you have. You can also group one or multiple. And to do that, you can simply go to Control G. And once you do that, you will see you have group here and you will have axes right here in the middle. And your object will still have their own default axes. All right, so the alternative is going to here edit group, turn this window on and just reset settings to make sure that we all work in the same settings. And this general settings will do just fine. So hit apply, close, and now we have this group. So now what we can do with this group is we can go to edit, duplicate special, this little checkbox. Again, let's reset all the settings. And remember, now we need an instance, and we need an instance of an object who is lying on this axis right here, which is Z. So again, we will set this to -1, hit enter, and then hit apply. And now we'll get what we want. So when we select one object and try to move it, it will move. If we want to scale, it will scale. And if you want to edit the operation, it will edit. And if we go to, let's say, edge mode, move an edge, it will also be symmetrical on both sides. So this is going to be very, very useful, let's say, in situations where you need objects on both sides. This time you will be creating two groups. And also one other cool part about that is that you can now work in object or world symmetry if you want. So for example, I can add here some cuts, and we can come here and enable symmetry object Z, because we'll enable object simply because we are working already in the world symmetry. So now we can do, let's say, let me do extrusion, and we can also do, let's say, extrusion here. So we'll get the symmetry on the object while having the complete symmetry repeating on the other side. So it can be very, very useful if you need this type of workflow. All right, so now we can go ahead and focus on some other features of duplicate special that are maybe not as common. So let's go ahead and talk about group under, parent, world, and new group. So new group, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So for example, if I would select translates of value 20, actually we can go maybe -20. And if I decide to create 4 copies, all these new copies are going to be created in a new group. So if I hit apply, you will see my copies are right here, and there is my group. So if I select my group, I can move these copies to the side. Same thing it's going to be, okay, so let me just show you. So it's open right here and everything is grouped. And same thing, if I select an instance, hit apply, again, I can just move it aside. So this just simply means that whatever I do here, again, it's going to be applied to the other instances within that group. Now, parent and world, I mean something else. But first, before we talk about parenting, I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page what parent does. And to explain it in most simple way, is let's say we have 2 cubes in the scene, and these 2 cubes have no relationship to one another. So if I click on one cube, I can move it, I can scale it, and it will only affect this cube. Same thing with this one, it can be any object, and that just means that whatever is here separate, that just means that 2 objects have no relationship or relations, any connections to one another at all. But let's say that I want to have this cube selected, but if I select this cube, I also want that this cube moves and scales with this one as well. So that just simply means that we will need to create sort of a connection between the two. And this simply means that the one that I wish to move, transform, and do any kind of operation on it, scale, whatever, that one is going to be the parent, and the one that I want to follow will be the child. So the same thing we need to set up here in our outliner. So I'm going to call this one parent, and I'm going to call this one child. So what we need to do in order for this to work, we need to connect this cube to this one via our hierarchy. So meaning I need to now hold the middle mouse button and drag it on top or inside of this parent node. And once I open this with this little plus sign, you will see that now this child is connected to this parent node. So that just means if I select this cube, you will see that now the child cube will follow along. So basically this is group under parent. So this child is now in a group of this parent. So if I would now select this child, so this child node or simply this child cube, and with the same settings, I will just simply hit apply. You will see that it will be created, this all new instances will be created under this parent. So meaning that I can now move this in any way that I want. And again, I can transform and I can rotate, and each of them will follow along. So basically this is what group under parent means. And the difference between parent and world is that you'll notice that all of these child nodes were connected to the parent. If we select the world and hit apply, you will now see that they are not connected to the parent, and they are all of them independent, and we can move them as we want. So basically, if I now select the parent node with this one child inside, I can move it, but these cubes are not connected in any way. All right, so now we have again our generic cube, and we can focus on some other settings. So let's go to duplicate input graph. And so basically your cube here, or any other object, if you go to channel box right here, is going to have inputs. And this inputs simply mean, so for example, if I come here and let's say that we decide to create more cuts here like so. And if you go to inputs, you will see that everything that we did was recorded right here. And this is basically your history, and you can access this, let's say Polycube, and now we can play with the width, height, depth, and so on. If you now hit a copy, so basically with instance, this will be grayed out, but if you hit a copy and simply hit apply, and let's go and move it to the side, you will see that this duplicate will not have any inputs. The original will have it, but the duplicate will not. So basically what this means is that duplicate input graph will now, when you hit apply, create a copy of the same inputs that the original object already had. So basically that's all that there is. Duplicate input connections is connected to whatever. So let's say deform, and if we add bend deformer, and if you go into attributes and then bend, and let's say we create small curvature right here and go back to our inputs, we can now create a duplicate. So basically without it, I will just hit apply and again show you what it does, but yeah, not handle, but the object needs to be selected. So I'll just hit apply, move it to the side, and let's say that I wish to edit edges. Now I can edit this object and this one will not be affected in any way. If you wish that this one is affected as well, so you'll simply hit apply again while object is selected, and then you will be able to move, rotate, or create any sort of operations on the copy, but the original will also be affected as well. And the same thing works with the deformer. If you wish to go to, let's say, attribute manager, play with the deformer, it is going to be copied onto the new object as well. So again, in short, this is what duplicate input connections does. Now, finally, we have instance leaf nodes. And to be honest, I'm not sure exactly how to explain this or how this truly works. But if you go to official page for the description and duplicate special options, it will say that it will duplicate entire node hierarchies except for the leaf nodes, which are instanced to the original hierarchy. So basically, let's say we have, this is our parent. We can set this is our parent. So actually, when we're talking about parent-child connections, let's also cover assign unique names to children nodes. So yeah, this is what I wanted. So basically we have again parent one and child one, and I will again connect child to the parent node and assign unique names to children nodes. So if I wish to create now, let's say 3 copies right here and hit apply, what will happen, it will be parent 2, child 1, parent 3, child 1, and parent 4, child 1. Basically, what we maybe want in this case is that we have parent 1, child 1, parent 2, child 2. So this is what this does, is that if you hit apply, now in this situation, you will have parent 2, child 2, parent 3, child 3. You basically will have a proper naming for the child nodes. The same thing works if you would have multiple nodes right here. All right, so now that we have parent-child connection, what we can do is go to instance, and we can just create 3 instances here, and let's say 20 value, actually wrong value. I want here -20 maybe, and hit apply. And maybe we can put -30. Hit apply. Okay, so now we have a parent, we have a child, and then we have instances of that child. And if you would go to instance leaf nodes, and let me just actually reset everything, and instance leaf nodes, hit apply. Actually, let me select the parent first, hit apply, move to the side. Well, that just again means that you can come here and edit each of these instances on their own, but they will also affect the instances that you did on a previous object as well. So this is what it does. And again, if you want to go ahead to the original Maya description, it again duplicates entire node hierarchies except for the leaf nodes, which are instanced to the original hierarchy, meaning this one. So yeah, I believe that we covered more or less everything regarding to duplicate special option, and there are some tools, like I mentioned, that you are going to use more often than others, but it was worth, I think, going through it all, and just in case you want to play around with it even more. We were working only with the very basic examples here because I just wanted to go through the meaning of the tools real quick. But as we move on into more practical examples and move on to more complex objects, we are then going to check the real use of this tool, because it's very versatile and can be very useful in many situations. All right, so let's wrap up this video and let's move on to the next one.